and welcome staff and other members of the commission. Our first order of business today would be to review the minutes and approve them. I would trust that everyone has had opportunity to check the minutes, and a motion would be in order, if so.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes. This is Dan.
Mr. Chair, I'll second. This is Corey.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Our first order of business today on the agenda is Mr. Joe Ballant. Sean, would you take it from here, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I start, I just want to remind the Planning Commission that we have a site inspection already scheduled for March 2nd from an item on the previous meeting that has not been set or public notice yet. So just keep that in mind in case an item comes up today. Thank you. The first item in front of you, the Planning Commission made a recommendation to rezone a portion of the R2 lot, R2A lot, to agriculture to attach to the existing agricultural lot of record. That was the concept plan given for the rezoning. The county board approved that. We have received the survey for the subdivision portion of the request. So the west portion of the lot has been rezoned to ag. And this is a subdivision approved for the CUP, this subdivision. That's all I have at this time.
Very well. Would Mr. Joe Ballant care to add anything to that?
No, I just want to say thank you. Our whole goal here was with the two lots, when we got our septic put in and the county found an exception allowing us to put the septic where it should be, it required us to have an easement. And so we were basically asking to pull about 1.5 to 2 acres from the one lot to the other in order to get rid of that easement. We were able to successfully do it, and the survey team did a great job. And so I'm just here to say thank you for doing that.
All right, very well. Is there anyone from the public who would wish to comment on this proposed survey?
I do not see anybody signed in for that, Ken.
All right, very well. We'll bring it back up to the board. One question I had, perhaps, Sean, you could clarify for the record that indeed the rezoning was rezoned, or the property was rezoned according to a concept plan, and now with the final survey, there's a slight difference, and it's my understanding, Mr. Riley, that it does not make a substantive difference in the procedure here. Is that correct, Mr. Riley?
That is correct. We were taking a portion of the R2A lot to D-zone back to ag to attach it. The portion's a little bit smaller than what we originally thought. I think we have the basis on approvals to make our change to our zoning map to reflect this document.
Okay, very well. Well, then we'll bring this issue up to the board. Are there any comments or questions anyone would like to make prior to a motion being made? Well, hearing none, then I guess the chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion. Mr. Chair?
Yes, you are recognized. Go ahead, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve a conditional use permit for a subdivision in accord with the survey submitted and prepared by Meyer Rowland Land Services with the revised date of 2/21/2021, file number 21117, because it meets all minimum requirements for both districts and town board approves.
All right, very well.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye. We'll start at Mr. Bravender's end of the panel.
Bravender votes aye.
Felger votes aye.
Tanner votes aye.
Cathcart votes aye.
Very well, motion passes. Best wishes to you, Mr. Blunt.
Thank you very much. Appreciate everything that everyone did. Have a good day.
You're welcome. All right, our second item on the agenda is Mr. Justin Dooley. Sean?
Justin, are you online or he must be down in the room?
When I walked in, I thought they were for me. How you guys doing?
Hi.
Dan, did you want to assume the chair? We can announce your game.
Looks like Dan has arrived, Ken.
However you want to do it. I can assume the chair from you, Ken, if you're willing.
Well, really, that would be up to me, Dan.
That's what I says, if you're willing.
That's right.
Yes, I would, the vice chair would respectfully turn over the gavel to our chairman, Mr. Dan Moe.
All right, thank you, Ken, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And up is Justin Dooley.
Yes.
So, do you want to start, Sean? Take it.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, this item was continued for a site inspection. There's an existing winery that has a commercial outdoor recreation permit. Asking for an amendment and an addition for commercial ag tourism to include a building for public use, which the site plan showing the approximate building location and an area for additional parking. If you recall, at the previous hearing and at the site inspection, the discussion, the concern centered on expansion of events, also part of the request, and the existing status of the conditional use permit and outdoor music and the type of language we currently have that perhaps limits what that is and any concerns the Planning Commission might have with the expansion.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Is there anything you would like to add to that?
I do have one question. You know, Sean, you had mentioned, or you had commented on a concern of the existing status of the conditional use permit. I just was curious if you could elaborate on the existing status. Is there something that needed or that the board hopes to change prior to my ask of an additional 10 events?
Right, so the formal request is the current limit, the 10 events, and you're asking for the 20 events.
Yes.
And we have a condition on the music that essentially it won't be a nuisance for neighboring properties, and a record that seems to indicate the level of music and events is going to be pretty small scale, a low level of activity, similar to what we would approve and see when this was originally approved. An afternoon at a winery and a person sitting out perhaps with an amplified guitar, an evening event, not so much full-scale stage, band, amplification and such. So that's the type of things we pointed out the last hearing.
Sure.
For the Planning Commission to make sure that they understood which side of the fence that sits on and what you're requesting.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I guess, I apologize, I wasn't able to attend the site inspection. It sounds like there was just a little bit of a miscommunication with the mailing, but it sounded like my wife kind of showed you guys around a little bit, and hope she answered any and all questions that you had. And as far as expanding, into an additional 10 events, I mean, this is the whole reason why our ask here today is to have an indoor space, to have a lot of these indoor events. All 20 events are not going to happen in the summer. I mean, they're going to be spread over through the entire year. That's why we want additional events, so we can have said events in the winter months as well. I am completely open to discussion on limitations of those additional 10 events. I realize the bar has been set from the previous CUP quite high at is it 375 people that can be allowed on the property for those 10 events?
Does that sound right, Sean?
Correct, and it's also got hours of operations.
Yep.
The hours of the large events are currently limited to 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Music must cease by 9 p.m. for all operations, is only allowed on Friday and Saturday. So perhaps having an indoor building would alleviate some of the concerns about the music, or provide a method for any expansion to be defined as taking place indoors versus outdoors. That would be for the Planning Commission to further carve out if they need to.
Sure, and then, I'd also like to point out to the Planning Commission that it sounds like, Sean, I believe you have these letters, and maybe the Planning Commission does as well, but I've asked a couple of my neighbors, surrounding close proximity neighbors, to, write in, see, kind of their perspective of how the last year went at the winery. And I don't know if we share those, or if you guys have read through them, or.
Yeah,
Okay.
we received many of them and have read through them.
Okay.
They're in our packets.
I completely understand and respect the one neighbor that has concerns about that, or extending the events, and that's why, again, I'd be open to talking about what those additional 10 events might look like. I think the hours of operation, I don't know that needs a change. I know that the current 10 events can only happen on Friday and Saturday. The music ceases at 9. The winery closes at 10, and I don't think we've ever been open till 10, but only on event days. So maybe it's something, because an event consists of 100 people or more currently. So maybe those first 10 events, the current CUP stays in place. It's 100 to 375. And maybe the additional 10 events are up to 200 people. I completely understand that 375 people is a lot of people. I mean, don't get me wrong, we definitely have the space to hold that. But yes, that is a large crowd. But you can easily reach 375, 400 people. We're hoping to do an art festival this year, where we're going to line there's about 10 acres, probably 7 acres in the middle of the field there, that we'll line it all with tents, and there's going to be quite a few people there. Now, that's not an event that's going to create much noise. It'll create a lot of traffic, but I don't want this conversation to be surrounded around bands or rock bands or anything to that nature. We definitely want to be kosher neighbors, and I take everybody's comments into consideration. We can't be successful with having distraught neighbors, so definitely want to adhere to their concerns. So I guess that's my proposal on those additional 10, is limit them.
Okay. All right. Sean, do we have anybody from the public that is on?
I don't think there is, but we should open it up and maybe just wait a few seconds to make sure.
Okay, I guess I'm opening it up, so whenever you're ready or somebody's ready to comment.
So if anybody from the public is signed in on the Justin Dooley request, public comment is open. I don't think we have anyone.
All right, we will bring it back here to the commission. Is there anyone that wants to start?
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
this is Corey. I had a question for Mr. Dooley. I was wondering, the traffic that you mentioned, have you had discussions with the township out there about, or the county about traffic concerns if you do end up getting a lot of people out there?
We haven't had too many concerns nor discussions with the township on it. I know this is through conversation that I've heard from the neighbors, but I know at one point, I believe the previous owners were looking to put in a turn lane. I don't know what that would look like or what that entails, a turn lane into the winery in and of itself. But during fall, we have an apple orchard right down the road from us, and they probably have, great neighbors, but they get a lot of traffic during the fall season, as do we, from a lot of their backlog, and I think it's been working really well. We haven't really had any, or not really, we haven't had any accidents, no, cars honking their horn, but no, it's been, knock on wood, it's been working really well.
Good. My question was because, I was hearing the tent comment with tents and thinking of a lot of vehicles out there, and just want to make sure that emergency vehicles have access, to everything.
Yes. With that being said, there's two entrances on that property, a personal entrance that goes into our homestead and the winery entrance. And even on our personal private driveway, you can access the winery easily via that entry as well. So I haven't had much discussion with the fire department or emergency vehicles, along those lines, but it's definitely something that we're taking into consideration.
Okay. I was just going to mention, when I went out there and saw the property, I was really impressed. I've never heard of it, so if this goes forth, it's something I think my wife and I would enjoy coming out to. So
Thank you.
that's all I had. Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks.
is there any other comments?
Chair,
What?
thanks for coming in, Mr. Dooley.
Yes.
And as you pointed out, you weren't at the site inspection, your wife was, so there was different conversation there than we had with you initially. And then she had conversation with you while we were there and came out. So it's good just for review, I think, so everybody understands what we were told from her through you. And like I told her, the biggest three things with concerns with these kinds of things is traffic, parking, and noise. And for those that are wondering about the traffic out there and concerns, you mentioned the apple orchard, and I've worked as a deputy out there for over 20-some years, and I've never handled a crash related to the orchard or the business before you were there. There's a lot of crashes in the curves, but not related to coming and going from there. So I think it's important for those that aren't familiar with the area to know that it's been there a long time. I don't work 24 hours a day, but I just don't have that experience there of that being a problem. So then it's the noise, and then when you were here, you were kind of thinking or proposing a full-size stage in a concert type atmosphere, but when we got out there, your wife had said that you had scaled that down and back, and so that's kind of where we're at, I'm assuming, unless you've changed your mind.
Yes, and I appreciate you bringing that up, and I sincerely apologize. It must have been the nerves that got the best of me, but there has been no discussion on putting a stage up on that facility. I think I haven't listened to the last meeting, but I think probably what I was referring to is that we've had bands there that they've brought in just like a mobile stage where they've set up a stage maybe twice the size of this table and played on that and then took it down. But no, there's not going to be any stage set up. It's strictly the two asks are the expansion of the events and the additional space.
So,
So
I like that we got the clause in there from the previous one of, the idea of a 1-year, permit so that it can be revisited.
yep,
And then if there's any concerns, we did have the letters from the nearby neighbors, so I know the proximity that we don't have people 10 miles away on your behalf saying that,
Sure.
yeah, it sounds good.
Yeah.
So, but that's relevant because we talked about those letters initially and they came in and we read them. But, so that's what got my attention is that was this kind of thing where there is a little bit of a history and then now a start up of something new that we could revisit it in a year.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, along those lines, I sincerely appreciate some of those neighbors writing in. And again, I mean, we can't be successful without the community support, so.
along that lines of review, a lot of times what we've done in the past is we refer it to the township, that it's, you go to the township in a year and have it reviewed. Because, because the township is out there, a lot of times they're a little closer than what we are per se. So a lot of times we'll put on our motion to be reviewed by the township in a year. If there's no problems and the township is happy, then he doesn't have to come before us again. It's how, just to make you aware of how we've done it in the past, is we do it for township review.
Okay.
And go to the township board, and then it doesn't have to come back here.
Okay, I didn't get that probably clarified in page 3 under action where it talked about that it went to them. I thought it was
Okay.
potentially coming back here, but either way.
Mr. Chair.
Dan?
And I, as a business owner, I kind of have a little bit of an issue with interim when you're putting all kinds of money into an infrastructure and then you have a 1-year interim
Yeah.
permit. As far as the township being reviewing it, I feel a lot better about that because then it's not something it's still in place. It's not in place with that interim clause in it. That would kind of concern me as a business owner, putting up the new building and
Yep.
so that was just my take on it when I read
Yes,
through
that's-
everything, so.
A very, very good point, and I truly am not concerned about there ever being any issues. I hope, if there was an issue with a neighbor, I hope that, he or she, we can discuss it in person, because again, we want to be cordial neighbors, and we hope to really make that place a destination where people can come and enjoy, wine, pop, beer with all their friends, family, kids, and I think we've had probably about half kids and half adults there last summer. So, I mean, I know they like coming out and having a picnic out there, so.
And I think if we can be clarified, I think you're getting to that point with the new building, is to not have outdoor music, other than, maybe somebody playing a harp or, that kind of stuff during the day.
Sure.
But, you get into the weddings and that kind of stuff, and once you start getting amplified music outside, it does get louder.
Yep.
And many people, it won't bother, but that's when you can potentially start having some complaints. And as long as we can keep all the traffic off of the county road, for parking.
Yep.
And that kind of stuff.
Definitely.
I think,
So, just so I understand, so are you saying we can't have any outdoor music? Or?
I'm not saying any outdoor, it's more the amplified, like when you get a wedding dance.
Yeah.
They like to turn it up.
Yep.
And if that's enclosed within the building, the sound doesn't travel near as much as if you have it up on the hillside up over there and it's a total outdoor wedding and you got amplified music
Yep.
because they can't hear it way down by the tasting room.
Sure.
And that's when music starts to carry.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
I agree. I'm hoping that, along those lines, and just for the pure fact of transparency, I'm hoping along those lines that we're still able to have some outdoor events with acoustic music, and because the summers, they're far and few in between here in Minnesota.
Yeah.
But yes, the majority of, wedding dances or live music, the majority of it, yes, will be held inside that tasting room.
Yeah. And
Or event center or space or,
Right. And if it's indoors, it encapsulates the
Definitely.
music much more.
definitely.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's usually where our issues come from, is
Yep.
with music and loud music at, in the evenings, people are wanting to wind down and sit by their own private fire pits, and then if every weekend for 2 nights a week, that's when complaints come in and
Sure.
challenges arise.
Yep. Nope, I 100% agree.
So, is there anyone else from the board?
And Mr. Chair, just to your benefit, that earlier cutoff of the music is a better selling point, so it's earlier in the evening
Yeah.
instead of 10, 12, and midnight. So
Exactly.
just keep that in mind, whoever the powers that be are, that
Okay.
probably adhere more to the end of the music time, and that'll draw less attention to you
Sure.
also.
Sure. Definitely.
Any other comments here from the board? If not, is somebody willing to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion.
Mike?
A motion to amend the existing CUP. Now, we got 4 1 year as an interim here, but did we want to change that language then?
I would say so, to have it reviewed by the township in a year. Rather than interim.
Okay, motion, repeating,
Sense? Does that make sense?
a motion to amend the existing CUP to be reviewed in 1 year by the township, to allow for the expansion of a tasting room in a new building for the winery under commercial agricultural tourism, to allow for indoor gatherings in accord with the narrative and plans held on file, and to expand the limit to 20 large public events a year, which are any event with 100 people or more, with the following conditions. 1, all required permits must be acquired before the expansion can take place for the new building and septic. 2, parking areas expanded before the implementation of the expanded number of events and expanded tasting room can occur. 3, food for the expanded building events will be catered in. And 4, any expansion or change in conditions would require a new CUP, or they have to come back in 1 year, but that's not going to apply.
Second.
All right, I have a motion made and seconded. Is there any other discussion? There's no other discussion. We'll have a roll call vote, please.
Ravender votes aye.
Felger votes aye.
Tanner votes aye.
Ketchmark votes aye.
Maul votes aye. Motion carries.
All right. Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you, guys.
Okay,
Luck.
you.
take care.
You guys enjoy the warm weather.
Yeah.
Finally.
Absolutely.
All right, next, once we get ready here, we'll have Buffalo Lake LLC.
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty, okay, Sean, whenever you're ready.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, this item has been rezoned from agriculture to an ARPUD. It's been continued a few times for the applicant and property owner to work with the township on the road situation and get us all the survey information. This is the preliminary plat of the property shown on the PowerPoint. So at this time, the preliminary plat contains all the information required for a preliminary plat. The conditional use permit review is to approve, modify, or deny this conditional use permit request and attach requirements and conditions to it. I'm done.
Okay. Is it,
For now.
does the applicant have anything to add?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Paul Otto.
Yep, go ahead.
Actually, afternoon, I'm sorry. Yeah, so basically we've been, just to kind of give you an update, it's been a little while since this board looked at this, but we have been working with the township, or I should say maybe more. The township has been putting together road specs for the township to keep them even throughout the township. And it's my understanding they will be approving those pretty soon. They haven't been quite approved yet, so we are, to be in all transparency, we are still working with the township on the road design and the actual what will be built to their standards. So, but they have indicated that they will take over the road. It's just a matter of what they want that road to be, and we're prepared to build whatever they want. At this point, our plans do show what their current road specs are designed to be, so we should be good in that respect. But there'll be some delay between us coming in for final plat until we work everything out with them on that part of it. The other things, just to kind of refresh everybody's memory, we did design this plat to stay out of the wetlands, so we have no wetland impacts. The lots actually do not contain any delineated wetlands. It's all contained within the outlot. And then we tried to provide access to all the outlots. Or all the outlot, I should say, all the lots do have access to the outlot, I should say. So I think this is pretty much in line with what you saw last time. We modified a couple minor back lines to get out of wetlands, but it's pretty much in line with what you saw last time. Couple of comments. The existing buildings, there's a couple buildings in the southwest part of the property off of Armitage that will be removed. I have looked at the staff comments, and I do have one thing that I do want to discuss and get clarification on, and that is and we can touch on this later if you want, or now, or you can let me know, but that is the building permits and when those could be issued. So I'd just like to have a discussion with the board on that and get your feelings on that. But otherwise, the rest of the information in the staff report, we're comfortable with.
I guess my question to you, Paul, on the survey and stuff, and looking at some of the stuff and from some of the staff's comments, one of my concerns, also sitting on the Board of Adjustments, is the sizes of houses. You know, with a development going in like this, you know, nicer end homes could potentially go in. And is there enough room to place some of these houses? And then what tends to happen in a few years, they want outbuildings of a couple thousand square feet. And are some of these lots going to be able to accommodate that and to stay out of the floodplains?
Yeah, for the most part, yes. And again, that's always caveated by where they build, what they build. You know, if you build your house in the wrong spot in the beginning, you know, you might have a problem with an outbuilding. So, you know, what I always tell my clients when they're looking at lots and where to build and what to do is I say, well, think about anything and everything you may ever want. Do you want to, you know, would a swimming pool ever be in your future? Would an outbuilding? You have to keep in mind these lots are the smallest lot is 2 acres. So we should be able to fit a house, 2 septics, and a good-sized shed on 2 acres. Typically, when I look at these on a rural situation, when we've got a lot that's down to about an acre is the minimum that you could get a house, and it would be more like a 2-stall detached garage. That's going to take about an acre. Lots 1 and 5, or I should say, Lot 1, Block 1, which is the first one coming in off the county road on the south side. That one will be limited because there's some steep slopes in the back. So that one will be limited to have outbuildings, as well as Lot 5. If you go straight ahead, that one is limited because of the feedlot setback. Actually, both of those are limited because of the feedlot setback that we have to maintain. So there are a couple lots that are limited in here, but for the most part, the remainder of them, if people plan ahead, they should be able to accommodate what they need.
Okay, because that's just one of my concerns is, one board or the other does something and down the road it affects the other one, and then the next thing you know, people are coming in for variances. And I guess when we're doing something from the beginning, I really want to try to avoid that.
Right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Sean?
on that note, in the suggested motion, we have building sites will pretty much conform to the submitted site plan and survey. And I have the discretion, if they substantially change, it could require a conditional use permit for land alteration or an amendment to this original request, but might as well have this discussion now. So my interpretation of that is the lots largely, or the building sites largely on the west lots of the road that are shown by the road, and then there's slope going as you go west. If people flip-flop those sites, if they want their house 5, 6, 8 feet down in elevation with land alteration and retaining walls and septic sites moved, I would likely interpret that as a substantial difference from this document. On the east side of the road, if people want to move their house up by the road and find alternative septic sites, or go maybe on the north part of the lot by the road instead of the south part of the road, I'm not going to call that substantial. So my concern here is mainly dropping in elevation with house sites versus what's showing on this plan.
Yeah, and that was some of my concerns too. When you're moving towards the floodplain, with some of these sheds or outbuildings or houses, will there be variances in that? And that's what I would like to avoid.
Right, so that's a given, that floodplain's got to be adhered to, and we're going to discourage variances. But the issue of going down 8 feet lower and subsequent land alteration, I don't know if Paul has any thoughts or the planning commission. I want to avoid the debate of, is this a legitimate debate in 4 years? That we reviewed one document and essentially it does not matter at all where houses were located, that they can move the pieces around, versus me saying in the planning commission that to some degree this is being reviewed under these conditions, plus or minus.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
And I would agree with that, Sean, being we have a document made with the floodplains in it and the way it is laid out. I would agree with you, Sean, that we should try to adhere to as much to where things are laid out, or where this Paul has got things laid out as what's presented. So I'll get off. And Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With relation to that, as we look at the diagram, we talk about where the septics are and where the house is. Did we already are these approved 1 and 2 septic sites, or does that have to be done yet? And that part could move because it's not suitable according to the experts that come out and mark those things off. Do we know that?
So, Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, the initial work has been done. Paul and his crew did the soil borings and put an area for 2 septic sites. They need to be fully designed for the number of bedrooms, lift stations and such to get permits. And obviously if they move from that site, they have to start over. So the issue is more about property owners buying these lots and wanting a completely different house location versus plus or minus what's shown on this document. And the point of it is not just to adhere to a document or to do it, but because there's additional impacts and concerns as you go down a steep slope or a hillside from a road towards a floodplain or a lake and wetlands, and land alteration needed to build driveways and structures and drainage concerns and those type of things.
Mr. Chair?
Ken?
Yes, I have a question, and it is relative to the suggested placements of the home structures. Now, Mr. Otto, I see that there's little squares there, and that's obviously the suggested house placement. Now, those obviously have been determined by looking at the elevation, the floodplain, and lot setbacks, and so on. Now, who says that if there's another spot on there that fits that very same criteria, why could that area not have been chosen as a suggested home placement? And Sean or Paul, whoever wants to jump in here would be fine, and I would like a follow-up.
So I'll go first, Paul. Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, so you say the very same criteria. One of those criteria would be elevation. So for example, Lot 2, Block 3, if that house goes from the southeast corner to the northeast corner at a similar elevation and setback from the road, and the septic sites are in a similar layout, well, let's say they want to do a detached garage where that house was originally laid out, that's fine. If that elevation goes down for the 5 feet and ballpark, 1,000 or 1,500 yards of material needs to be brought in to build up everything, I would say that's not meeting the same criteria.
Yeah. And Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes, Paul.
Paul Otto again. I agree with what Sean's discussing and getting at. I think that in this case, or actually in most cases, I think the elevations are a little bit more important to look at. And I think also looking at your county ordinance, I mean, essentially if you're moving more than a certain amount of material, you're supposed to be getting a permit for it. So that doesn't happen a lot on a house construction, but I think it's probably relevant in a case of these PUDs where we have tried to establish where the home should go. And the home location on here is, you know, I'll be honest with you, it's, if I was going to buy this lot, where do I think I would build, or where would 50% of the people build? I've done this quite a bit, and I will tell you that I'm wrong 50% of the time. You know, somebody looks at the lot and they see something different than somebody else does. And so I think it's good to have the latitude to be able to move it around, but the elevations and the moving of material, because you can make, you know, I can design a lot to make almost anything that you want if cost isn't an object. And I think that that's what we want to avoid at the county level, is that, you know, you're not, that if those things are being done to make this lot how somebody wants it to be, that they should have more strict rules than the guy who's just going to put it in there the way that all of us would look at it and say, yeah, that makes sense. I guess that would be my 2 cents on that placement and direction as far as when do they have to come back to this board.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ken?
Mr. Chair, I would like to ask Mr. Riley now, how closely do you adhere to these little square suggested home placement boxes on the plat?
So, Mr. Chair, planning.
I mean, I'm not by any means suggesting that they're going to have to haul in dirt or cut dirt or whatever the case might be. My only concern is that I think there should be a little bit of latitude in terms of where that home structure could be placed reasonably without having to go through variances or without having to go through massive amounts of earth moving and so on. Restricting it to a particular little box, and I don't know if you do or not, Sean, it just seems a little bit unreasonable to me.
So, Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, that's the reason for this discussion, and it's, again, not so much about the box, it's what kind of conditions and criteria are around that box. Elevation, proximity to property lines. If this was an AR 10-acre layout, we would not necessarily be as concerned about, is it on the north half or the south half? Even though the south half might bring twice the amount of dirt work. Why? Because it's having no other impacts on the development. A PUD, we have criteria on a unified development. They're smaller lots, it's a higher density, and what one person does on one lot, perhaps above and beyond, can work its way down the plat. So in other words, I see this as a unified development that largely has houses and garage elevations at or similar to road elevation.
So let's say I came in, let's say I was a potential property owner, Sean, and I wanted to kind of investigate where I could place that. Let's say I came in with a convincing case where, okay, Sean, here's not a little square, but here is an oblong shaped configuration where I think I could probably place a house, taking into consideration floodplain, elevations, setbacks, and so on. What would you say to me if I came in with something like that as a proposal, Sean? Would you throw me out the door, or would you say I have to stick to those little boxes?
Well, I would say put it on that map. I'd say where do you want your box? And it would be one or the other. Where you want your box either matches up similar in elevation and criteria, and we're good. Or if it doesn't, I'm not going to kick you out the door. I'm going to say you have recourse and you need to apply to the Planning Commission to review the associated land alteration and the change from the original approval and see what that process brings you.
Well, I'm not necessarily talking about a great deal of land alteration at all, but all things being equal, let's say I was scooting my house just a little bit outside of that box in a reasonable manner without having to move a great deal of dirt, still abiding by the floodplain elevation and still abiding by the setbacks. I'm confident that that would meet approval. Would you agree with that?
Based on that description and those words, I would agree.
Okay, very well, then that makes me a little bit more comfortable. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Ken. Is there any other comment from the board?
Mr. Chair,
Mike?
I don't know if we got any particular order, but I was gonna talk about a couple of the written comments from neighbors, or are we sticking to some other protocol here?
Oh, no,
Okay.
we're we can discuss what you choose.
Okay, so one of the letters addressed lawful or legal access or not to that Deer Lake channel. So I'm looking up at the diagram that we got on the board here, and it looks like next to the words outlot A, to the left of that, and I was reading, is that like a walk-in access that would allow residents without going on anyone else's property to legally access that water in the channel?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Paul.
Sean?
I'm just not, Are you talking about where Outlot A touches Armitage, the township road?
Well, it looks like Outlot A, just the word Outlot A. If you go to the west of that, you see the two dotted lines that it looks like is maybe an access path and that maybe leads up to the Deer Lake Channel.
I'm assuming we're talking about Armitage, right, Paul? The narrow.
Mr. Chair, I think what he's referring to is there's the delineated wetlands. So I think if we go from the O on Outlot and we go kind of northwest, there's a little lobe there of water. That's actually the Deer Lake Channel. Yeah, just a little bit right up in there. That's actually water, a little bay that was probably dug out at some point, but that's a little bay on the Deer Lake Channel.
Okay.
And yeah, you can see it there. And we actually own across the Deer Lake Channel in this case. So we own the whole of that Deer Lake Channel, both sides of the property. The water obviously is subject to DNR rights, but that would be, yeah, we could access that channel basically all the way along that Outlot A on the west side.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying, because somebody addressed that in a letter. I wanted to clear that up. Then another letter addressed the feedlot that's been to the east for a number of years, and I'm just wondering if there's anything in the plan that would cause them, if they have a legal feedlot and the permits that go with it now, if there's any adjustments that they would have to make if this proposal goes through.
So, Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, the feedlot is on the property to the east, shown on the PowerPoint. And the preliminary plat has a line delineated showing where houses must be 500 feet from that feedlot boundary. So they would not have to make any changes from the current conditions because of this plat.
Okay, and they talked about the spreading of manure potentially on the land adjacent to. Is there any setback for addressing or applying that kind of thing to their land as a setback from this new development?
Tracy, if you're on, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, this is Tracy Giancula, Planning Commission Board Chair. The setback for manure application is 100 feet from a well. And so it would depend on where the well is on, it'd be lot 1, block 1. So that would really be the only one that's directly impacted with the setback. The odor is a totally different thing, and they just have to deal with it.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to get that on the record because there was a letter that we addressed that. So thank you for those answers. The next thing is the road with the township. They sent their own request that they wanted adhered to in order to take over the road, and that's kind of been glossed over to some point here that it's still in the works. So I'm wondering if that is far enough along for Mr. Riley, or even the legality part for maybe Mr. Kreiser, that we're far enough with that agreement. There was some different stipulations that the township requested as far as, I think their words were, a 2-year warranty from the time the last house was constructed. And I was at a meeting on a previous proposal, and the concern was heavy equipment leading up to the construction of the last house and a frost season, I think, too, to go through before that time frame expired. So are we far enough along with that to proceed when that's not been finalized yet?
Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, we have a preliminary plat that shows the minimums being met. We have a township indicating that under some set of conditions, they are willing to have this be a public road. There's always concerns when it's not completely clear on what a township wants. If they want things more restrictive, let's say a warranty, they can be more restrictive. The final plat has requirements, essentially a developer's agreement that needs to be in hand before the county board will sign off on a final plat. So the concerns I would have is if and when we get to that stage, that we don't find some disagreement either between my office or the county attorneys, and a final plat sits here.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Ketchmark, Marysville Township on August 20th, excuse me, indicated that they would accept the road if it's built to their specs. If they're still negotiating that with Paul over what their specs are, I don't see that as a hindrance to approving this preliminary plat. I mean, Mr. Otto, I assume the road's not moving. Excuse me, the road's going to stay where it is. Plats are going to go out like they are. It's just how much base, how much bituminous. You're down to that kind of stuff, right? Not I guess, right-of-way area, correct?
That is correct.
So I think with that, I mean, they're not going to get building permits underneath their subdivision ordinance, underneath the requirements before you until they enter into that developer's agreement. So those issues will be taken care of before a house gets built out there.
Thank you,
Mr.
Kreiser.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Sean?
Yeah, to continue on that, Paul had an earlier question about building permits, and we do lay out a scenario of the township finding the road at an acceptable level to issue driveway permits and indicating building permits can be issued. So the staging on this is going to be developer's agreement, final plat, improvements, and then improvements ideally to a level that we can issue building permits, and then completion and acceptance of the road.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yep, Dan?
We've been through a few of these in Cokato Township, and it's worked well for us. Once the plats are approved, that we deal directly with the developer, and when that road meets the specs that we have decided, we'll take that road over, whatever the requirements are, whatever the warranty we want on the road, we will take it over at that point. And it's to the developer's advantage to make sure those are all met, because they don't want to own that road, believe me. So that's kind of the way it's worked for Cokato Township, and I think that's kind of what you were saying too, Greg, is that correct?
Commissioner Bravender, that is correct. Yes, these developer agreements really do finalize it. The developer wants to get this stuff built and done.
Yep.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Sean?
I think the concern here is, and Dan, Commissioner Bravender, I don't know how you would deal with this one at the township level, is the township previously indicated to have all homes completed before they accept the road. Well, in theory, the homes might not be completed for 10 or 15 years. I don't know if that means the township can still do their proper maintaining the road, and the road can be built and essentially signed off on. So there is a concern on that.
Okay, Dan?
Sean, I think I can answer that, because there's so many different ways you can do this. Like the last one we did in Cokato Township, we knew that very well could happen, and there's still lots that need to be sold in this area. We wanted to make sure, from our standpoint, that the road had settled to our satisfaction where it was going to be able to withstand any of the traffic that was coming on that road. In this case, it's a 9-ton road. That was the criteria, not necessarily if all the homes were built. Now, if that's what Marysville wants, that's what they're going to have with their developer. I think they can really be different, and I don't know if the county gets involved with that, do they?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Bravender, I would anticipate the county would be a signatory on that agreement, but the township would be the main driver of that agreement. We would just sign on as a regulatory authority.
Okay, thank you. Is there Any other comments on this?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Ken.
I have a question for Sean, if he could please, on our most recent staff notes. I note that down under paragraph B, almost to the bottom there, it says that the outlet that touches County Road 8 is too steep to access by foot. What is that referring to?
So you're going to have the township road that obviously comes off the county road, and you're going to have a lot that bounds the county road, but access will be from the township road. And then anything along the county road to that outlot is only accessible by foot. Well, unless you want to try to drive a bike down it. It's not meant for a driveway.
Oh, I see. Well, perhaps that was a misspelling, Sean, because it says the outlet as
Yep.
opposed to outlot.
That should be outlot, and that would be similar when I was speaking
Okay.
of Armitage on outlot A, that this location would not be for regular access or driveway improvements, but for pedestrians, bike trail, and perhaps some miscellaneous equipment needed to maintain whatever environmental feature.
Sean, as long as you've got the cursor right there, that outlot, the entire outlot, is that going considered to be private property then, or can the residents of Armitage, for example, use that entrance to gather or to gain access to the proposed trails out on outlot A?
So on paper, it's private. It's going to have to be owned and controlled by a homeowners association, which is this plat. And I think that would technically be trespassing if somebody did walk onto the outlot, just as it would be now.
Surely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Do we have any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, Paul Otto again.
Go ahead, Paul.
So one of the things that I want to clarify on the building permit part of it, and I think as long as, and Sean kind of restated what the staff had put in their report, and I guess, so I'm understanding that as long as the township says that the township would tell the county when building permits could be released. And if that's the case, then I'm okay with that, but Lot 1, Block 4 should be able to get a permit right away because it's off an existing. Oh, did I break up?
No, I was just getting my orientation there. So in regards to access off the road, that's probably accurate. There's some buildings that need to be removed.
Right, but if that was, my point is the road Antelope Avenue wouldn't have to be built to township standards to pull a permit on that lot. Is my question.
I'm making sure we don't have it. No, other than the final plat has to be signed. We have to have the developer's agreement. We have to have the township approving the driveway off of Armitage and have the buildings removed.
Right, if that happens, then we can pull a permit.
Sean and Paul, I see what you're getting at, Paul, because our proposed motion is covers the entire thing. Yeah,
Well,
that's being accessed off of a different road. I think a condition could be added by the planning commission saying that Lot 1, Block 4 is exempt from the road development standards for a building permit.
But still needs township approval because it's a township road.
Right. Greg's got exactly what I was getting at.
Right.
He's just saying don't hold up the sale and building permit on that lot just because we're still working out the details of the developer agreement on the other ones.
Or maybe we have it all squared away, but we don't have the road done yet.
Well, Greg, if we don't have the developers agreement, we don't have the final plat done. That needs to be done before we issue building permits for that lot.
Right.
The plat has to be filed, yes. Yep.
Correct. So under that scenario and meeting all the other conditions, I would agree with that.
Okay. We're on the same page then.
All right, is there any other comment here? If not, is somebody willing to read that long motion, or Sean, can somebody just,
Mr. Chair, I could summarize.
yeah, summarize or move as presented?
Well, Mr. Chair, I would advise, it's been thoroughly vetted by the Planning Commission and the representative for the applicant. I think we agree on all language except for adding a provision that lot 1, block 4 can have a building permit independent of the requirements of the road build for Antelope.
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
So I'll make a motion to accept the proposed final staff action with the exception of lot 1, block 4 can have a building requirement without the final road plan for Antelope Avenue completed.
Not plan, I would say road, completion of road build.
Without the completion of the road build.
Does that work, Paul?
That's good.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded. I think we all understand what we're talking about with that additive. Is there any other discussion? If there's no other discussion, we'll have a roll call vote.
Bravender votes aye.
Felger votes aye.
Tanner votes aye.
Ketchmark votes aye.
Maul votes aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Okay, number 4 is Curtis Weirs.
Did somebody have a question for the chair?
yeah, I did. This is Corey. I was just gonna mention, I have to pick up my daughter and I'm gonna switch to my phone. You see me drop off.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, can you give your name, please, for,
I'm Curtis Weirs. I'm with Right Way Auction Service.
okay?
I'm Carrie Newhouse, I'm also with Wright Way Auction Service.
Okay, thank you. Sean, whenever you're ready.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this property is zoned commercial. Just a second. Sorry, zoned industrial. It's in the land use plan as transition area. The request is to build a new building to run the commercial operation. I'm going to let Mr. Weirs describe it in detail. Some of the practical concerns are a turn lane needing to be built per MnDOT standards. There's an existing building that's an older condition and does not meet the setback, so a new building cannot be built at that location. And on the east property line, our interpretation is because there's an existing residential lot, a small lot, and a commercial business operation next to it, that requires screening / fencing or other type of landscaping or screening on that east property line. I'll turn it over to the chair.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, what your plans are?
Just as far as the building goes, our initial intention was to remodel the building and use the building there, and then after assessing it with a contractor, it just isn't worth doing. So we want to replace the building, so we would just move it to meet the setbacks, but just replace it with a similar like building, so.
Okay.
Full building with an office in it.
And then, I know we have it here in front of us, but for the record on some of, what are your plans, or what are you thinking for use for the
Our
property?
intentions are to do a consignment auction lot there where people will bring in items and then we'll have it lined up and have lines of equipment there, mostly heavy equipment, construction equipment, farm equipment. And for the most part, it'll be online auctions. We applied for it where we can do a live auction there and put that part of our site plan where we'd have parking, because someday we might want to do that, but at this point with the COVID deal, live auctions just aren't really happening. So if it goes back to that, we'd like to have that option.
Okay.
That's where the turn lanes come into play, where with the heavy traffic coming in and out of there, the state says it needs turn lanes. We are negotiating that with the current owner, because we're the future owner, and we're gonna negotiate that and get that set up.
Okay. Is there anyone, Sean, from the public that has comment?
I do not see anybody signed on for this item.
Okay, thank you. Anyone from the planning commission here with questions?
If you're familiar with like the Els and Peter lot up on Highway 25 south of Monticello, that's real similar to what we'd be doing there. There's another consignment auction place in Monticello. It'd be similar to that.
And I know the planning commission 3 or 4 years ago were out here to this property for site inspections, so probably Mike and Corey may not be as familiar with the site inspection, but I'm sure you're familiar with the property out there. So I mean, the planning commission has been out there. Dan?
And I think it's a good use of the property. And it's just,
Right.
it's been sitting vacant for a long time with that for sale sign up there. I don't like that.
Right, right.
I like to see commercial property being used.
Right.
So I think it'd be a good use for it.
We
So,
just ran across it and just thought it would work perfect for this, so.
yeah. And you got good sight lines, in and off the highway because it's a straight road there. It's nice and straight. It's right just east of Howard Lake, on the south side of Highway 12.
I'm very familiar with it. I sold some cans there when it was P&O Junkyard about 40 years ago.
Yeah.
How far do you want to go back?
Well, you're old, Mike.
Far enough.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mike.
So you heard what Sean said, Mr. Weirs, about the fence on the east side to protect the current resident and/or if that house changes hands, because they had a connection to when it was a junkyard, of course, but I think the interest is if the property changes hands and having a degree of fencing or screening. Did you have a plan for that at all?
We did not, because that's the first I had heard about that fence, so.
Well, that's why we're here.
Yep, so, but, I guess we're planning on putting some sort of fence there, but we didn't know, if it needs to be something to block visibility, we'll have to make a different plan. I guess if that's a requirement, we're willing to do so, but we were planning on just putting more of a type of a rail fence up there just to separate the properties. If you're gonna do a screening, it'd have to be some sort of 6-foot fence or something, I'm guessing.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Depending on what
Right.
the commission will come up with.
Sean, did you want to weigh in on what's usually acceptable fencing for this kind of an operation, since Mr. Weirs has not heard about that?
Well, correct. So more than a split rail, it can be normal, steel gauge, taller fencing. Often they're slatted, so it's screened, or landscaping, or a combination of.
Okay, thank you, Sean.
So a 6-foot fence, privacy fence type fence would qualify for this, like 6 foot high, like you'd put around a backyard of a house if you had a pool or something?
Yeah. I think in this layout, and because of the elevations and the house is a little bit set away, that would be adequate.
Okay, that would work for us.
So, Mr. Riley, just to clarify for him, is that just on the east side then that would be required? Because that's where the current residence is, or? is it-
Right, and then on the west side, I believe there's already an existing fence, correct, Mr. Mears?
Right, correct.
Right, so correct, not west side, east side, not towards the road, and not towards the farm field.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comment from the board?
Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion.
All right, Ken?
I would move to approve a conditional use permit for an auction sales lot to include an auto dealer's license to sell autos through auction sales and on-site trailer sales in accord with the site plan submitted. This would also include replacement of the existing building for office and storage space with the following conditions. Before the business can commence, the turn lane will need to be completed and approved through MnDOT. 2, building and septic permits will need to be obtained for the proposed new building, and new building will need to meet will need to meet all setbacks. The old building will need to be constructed before commencement. Wait a minute. The old building will need to be removed. Number 3, screening will need to be placed along the east side of the property to be comprised of, and I'll leave this open for discussion, a 6-foot fence, was it, Sean?
Yes.
Correct,
Okay.
it's a 6-foot privacy fence.
Okay. And will need to be constructed before commencement of operation. And 4, live auctions are limited to a maximum of 100 people on site at any given time. And 5, any changes in use or expansions would require a new conditional use permit.
Second.
All right, I have a motion made and seconded. Is there any other discussion?
Yeah.
Dan?
In part of that motion, are you aware of the motion here in regards to the turn lanes? That they needed to be approved, that completed and approved by MnDOT before business could commence?
I did hear that. I do understand it's not what I was hoping for, but
Well, the reason I brought that up is because you intended to do online
right.
to begin with. And I have a business on Highway 12 and I know that they go by traffic counts.
Right.
It's, you know, how many people coming in a day into your business. So is this something that fits with the motion being made with what you want to do?
I would like to see it if we're just doing onlines that we could start before the turn lane, because we're going to have to escrow money for the turn lanes in order to close, I would imagine. And so the money's going to be there and it's going to be scheduled to do, but if we could do online auctions prior to that with that and no live auctions until they're installed, that would be perfect.
So, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Sean.
I can't speak for MnDOT, and I'm hesitant to, on the fly, approve or disapprove what he may be able to do. So I don't know if we have language that MnDOT,
Sean?
yes?
Is it
I don't
easier,
know.
is it easier to say that MnDOT requirements must be met before
That
business
would work.
can commence?
Yeah, MnDOT requirements must be met before business can begin.
Right.
Yes.
And the way I understood it from MnDOT was if we escrow the money and they know the money's there, they're going to, it sounded like they were going to approve it as long as they knew it was going to be done in a fair time.
Well, just so you know that even if it's made that way, if they still, your MnDOT requirements have to be met
Right.
for MnDOT because they control the access to that.
Correct.
It's not the county.
Yeah.
So,
I just can't guarantee, Dan, that MnDOT might say, well, you got the money escrowed and online or not, you need to do it. If they
how that
say,
works.
Yeah, and I would like the option to deal with them directly to try to make that work. If you made the conditional use subject to that, I would deal with them directly and try to work that out.
Okay. Ken, have you, and Corey, have you heard all these discussions? And what are your thoughts? It's your motion and second.
It is my understanding through your discussions, and I couldn't quite hear all of it. It's my understanding that the motion would be changed to simply state all MnDOT requirements would be met. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then that brings up another question I have. And that is, are we talking just a right turn lane, or are we talking a left turn lane in as well? So I'm not too clear on that.
But that in the motion in my mind would be under all the MnDOT requirements being met. So it's basically, the motion, the way he's asking it, would be that he can work directly with MnDOT, being he's coming off of a state highway. And as long as MnDOT will give him the blessing, he can start his business.
Well, it could be, that might become very onerous if indeed MnDOT also requires a left turn lane, or in other words, like a suicide left turn lane out on the highway. So I don't know what to say about that. So, I will go along with stating that the right turn requirement, or he meet the requirements of MnDOT, whatever they might be. I just don't want to put this guy in a position where, hey, he's got to front a bunch of money and he'll not be able to even succeed in this business. And if you recall, there was a trailer sales operation here prior to this. No right turn lane required there. I remember when T&O was there, no right turn lane was required there. I just think perhaps MnDOT's position on this might be somewhat arbitrary on this, but I'll go along with it at this point simply to change the motion to read that MnDOT requirements be met. If they're too onerous, I guess that's the property owner's decision to either proceed or back out.
Okay.
That will be my position. And
Corey, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'll keep my second.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? If there's no other discussion, we'll go proceed with the roll call vote.
Bravner votes aye.
Felger votes aye.
Tanner votes aye.
Ketchmark votes aye.
Maul votes aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Yep, thank you.
You too, Mr. Ware. We'll see you out there.
All righty, sounds good.
Okay.
All right, next on the agenda is Ross Danielson. That's fine.
So you guys are aware, the MnDOT requirement is the same as what Elson Peters had for the online option. So the traffic patterns are there, obviously.
Yeah, so they know, MnDOT already somewhat knows what they're gonna ask for.
It's a pretty simple process really, because we just make application with MnDOT and then they grill you on the traffic and all that.
I just wanted to.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Just give me a minute, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Even though a lot of it's online, because they have a lot of traffic going. Pick up,
Yeah.
drop off.
Which one is Elson
I don't
Peters?
know, what is that, right?
Over
Oh, we
here.
have plexiglass down in the middle of our conference room tables and everything. And
Yeah,
like you said, you have to, we
but
have to
you
offer them.
have different ones coming up, so.
Yeah. We have to take an offer of masks, we have to offer plastic gloves, we have to make them take their hand, plexiglass down the middle of the conference room
For your
table.
closings, yeah.
And when they're done, everything and anything they touch sanitized. But, oh, yeah, keeps us open. We
Your
get
choice
it.
to come in or not.
Oh, no. I'm very much, I'd rather come and be personal.
All right, if you can give your names to the record.
It's Ross Danielson.
I'm Jonathan Danielson.
All right. Sean, whenever you're ready.
Do you hear me, Mr. Chair?
What's that?
Yes.
Do you hear me?
Yes, fine.
The property is in Marysville Township. The zoning is agriculture, so this is the zoning map for this area of the township. The light green is ag residential. It's in the land use plan as ag residential. The request is to rezone a 5-acre parcel to R2A. And there's an existing house with an entitlement. The second lot of the subdivision would be the remainder as the ag division. And then the rest of the land needs to be tied to commonly owned contiguous land for proper road frontage. I will let Mr. Danielson describe the history of the property and his request.
Okay. You want to go through it with us?
I will. So we're asking for entitlement division. There's an original division that was taken off from the corner at the upper northeast or northwest corner of the property back in the 70s, when my parents split off the existing farm buildings in the house, and then they eventually built a new house in 1995 in the what was part of the pasture, and built some new pole barns. We also own the property to the east and to the north on this. So it ties in with the rest of the other farm that we have. We're requesting to take and split off the house and the pole barn that's closest to the house on about 2.5 acres. And then requesting to do a second entitlement for the 5-acre split, as it's there to pick up the other 2 buildings in the back. We've had soil tests done on it and stuff, so we have a primary and secondary septic location for the new lot. It is in an area that is consistent with the surrounding parcels. If you look at the aerial, it'll show that the houses that were split prior to the zoning ordinances coming into effect, but there's a 4-acre piece, a 5-acre piece, an 8-acre piece. There's the original 10 acres that came off from my mom and dad's farm. On the other side of Bolton, the properties that access off from Bolton, the first property is 1.25 acres, the next one's 1 acre, the next one's 3 acres. The rest of that, then it gets back to minimum maintenance road and to floodplain area. So it's a little bit of a challenging area to take and work with as far as some of the natural boundaries that we have. So we're utilizing the woods on the south and the property line to the south. And then on the east, there's another pond and stuff that we're going to use as a natural barrier to it. And then of course the property line to the north. We meet or exceed the requirements for the R2A as far as setbacks and buildability area, that 300 by 300 square. It's utilizing, we're trying to set it up for the highest and best use and stuff with the adjoining property lines and kind of using some of the common property lines. As you can see where the property to the south will actually almost use that exact line as a just common area up to the corner where they split off the original farm and buildings and stuff that's there. So using those lines, the woods, the roads, the lowlands, and the natural boundary lines, we're trying to promote and preserve and maintain the agricultural land that we have there. It also helps us with, right now, we own the parcel to the north of this piece and the parcel to the east. technically those two 40-acre parcels only touched by corners. And this will actually give us legal access between the parcels of land together. And currently, right now, we kind of trespass across Carlson's piece to get back to our piece. Hasn't been a problem, but technically that would create that 20-acre piece that'll be remaining, ties us in, so we technically don't have to go across their property at all, ever. And stuff based on how they split off that 37 acres above the old farmhouse on the other piece. And stuff, so it helps us with that also. Just trying to protect and preserve the natural resources that are out there. We're using the existing roads, the power lines that'll be there and stuff. There won't be any additional expenditures to the township for any new roads or maintenance costs or anything of that. So many of the lots I know were created prior to the zoning ordinance, but it is important to keep whatever we're going to take and do in the future here and stuff to be consistent with what the neighborhood is, and try to utilize those natural barriers and stuff. And I know through the ordinances and stuff, it requires us to consider the health, the safety, the morals, the general welfare of the surrounding properties to be consistent with what is predominant in that area, and doesn't diminish or impair the property values. And we're using the marginal and the less feasible property stuff, which was pasture and stuff, and trying to keep that ag land preserved so we can keep farming it. So we're asking that if you can approve we'll do a general ag split off with my mom's house for the 2.5 acres, and then in requesting an approval for a 5-acre lot for an R2A split.
Okay. Sean, do we have anybody from the public?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead. Do you have something to add?
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, so I just want to keep us focused on the first part of the request. The property is zoned agriculture, the property being what's outlined in blue. And there's an existing house that could be divided off administratively as an ag division, leaving the rest restricted.
Yeah.
The applicant is wanting to time these together, so is requesting that a 5-acre R2A lot, a portion of the property be rezoned to R2A, so a subdivision would be the second step if that's approved, dividing off that 5-acre R2A lot, leaving the entitlement split, and the remainder having to be tied to the rest of the land because it can't be landlocked. The land use plan has it as AR. If you recall, there used to be a 10-acre lot on this property, and they rezoned it back to ag to allow more, perhaps, flexibility in doing divisions and moving forward. Ross is correct in that there are a number of small and similar lots in the area. I just want to make sure the Planning Commission understands that those are, lots of record. That quote, development and similar lots were done pre-ordinance or pre our current standards. And we provided you land use language to read and interpret. And anything you're reading about buildability and wetlands, even though not addressed today, off of the township road, the driveway, the septic site, the house location does not have existing wetland issues. It would be access to the back parts of the property that need to be addressed. We don't deal with wetland stuff usually at a rezoning, but there are comments. So that's what that part of the issues are about. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sean. Is there anyone here from the board that would like to start or have comments? I guess I can start. My one concern is by going against the land use plan and going to an R2A is we're out in a rural community with 10-acre lots and larger portions. And we see it on the Board of Adjustments all the time, these smaller lots. People live out in the country. They want larger sheds. They've got lots of toys. They've got things, they want bigger hobbies, whatever. And on that property, I guess Sean can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're only allowed a 2,000 square foot outbuilding on these 2-acre lots. There's enough room to build it and stuff, but then all of a sudden you get guys, you know, wanting basically a 3,500, 4,000 because they want to put their camper into it. And we're out in the rural area, the rural zoning, and when you all of a sudden, you know, you can do it administratively, you can make it smaller, but that's what the reason is for the 10-acre lots and the bigger. It's just, people are getting out to the country to get away from the city, to get away from that small lot in town because they want stuff. They want to park their campers. They want to have their snowmobiles, motorcycles, their hobbies, dirt bikes, all that kind of stuff. And the next thing you know, they can't build a big enough shed, and then something happens and they build a bigger shed, then they're back in here, you know, on bad faith because they didn't get permits to do it. I don't like creating something for somebody down the road, even if it stays in the family. Things change in families. It happens. So it's some of my concerns. I'm not saying which way I'm going, but those are my concerns, and I think they're valid.
So with the existing house that's there.
Yep.
There is a pole shed right close to the house. And maybe I'll.
And how big is it? Yeah, we've got pictures, pictures
Do you
of
have a
it.
satellite one too?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. That one's, I think 30 by 40.
I think that sounds right.
Which my understanding is that the building that's there, that there wouldn't, if it, I don't think it can be, if it's not at its max already, it's gotta be right close.
Yeah, that's
As
it.
to what that
Right.
that pole building can be there and stuff. And Sean and I have already talked about that would be restricted from being able to have anything any larger. The other there's two more buildings that are out there that are gonna be picked up onto that 5-acre piece. And then we would still be able to build on top of that another 1,660 square foot building if a person would want to, or add on to one of the buildings that are there. Or the other option that we have talked about is one of those sheds is like a 3-sided hay shed and stuff that, you know, could easily be taken down or converted and stuff. If somebody wanted to build a much larger structure.
Yeah.
But that would be the requirement that, you know, that would have to be met at the time based on what they want to build.
Right.
And stuff. So Sean and I have talked about that as to what the restrictions would be as to how big of a building can you build, or what can you do with the existing buildings and stuff. You know, what are your options?
Right.
And so,
But what we also run into the situation with the rezoning of it, we're setting a precedence in an ag res area.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where this is an ag residential, now all of a sudden we bring it down and bring it smaller. What is that going to bring to your next neighbors or 2 or 3 miles away? I mean, it doesn't even have to be adjoining.
Yeah.
We're going against, you know, or we're altering from the land use plan that we have.
my understanding from working through this whole thing is that we're meeting all the conditions of what an AR zoning would be, except the lot size, that being the 5 acres. But in doing that, we're also preserving the ag land and using natural boundaries for the separation between the ag land and what this lot would be. Mm-hmm. And it falls in consistency with everything else that's accessing off from that road. So it's falling into place to try to be consistent with it, and that's my understanding of what the goal is, to try to be consistent with the area.
Correct.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Sean.
just to get a couple numbers on record, if we have an R2A 5-acre lot, the limit is 4,000 square feet of outbuilding. If the ag lot is split off on 2.5 acres, the limit is 3,200 square feet of building. We can't create either lot and have it be over that coverage, so the buildings out there would conform to that number. I would agree with you, a 10-acre lot doesn't have the same limit. You can build bigger, but the R2A would allow up to 4,000 square feet. And again, just to make sure the Planning Commission understands, the 5-acre number isn't simply just a number, it matches up with a zoning district. So R2A is the major, or the main issue in front of you is the zoning district, not so much what the performance standards are, because those have to be met. This is about the land use plan and the Planning Commission reading the language and interpreting what they may be able to do for a rezoning request.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Any other comments? Dan?
Mr. Chair?
Yep. Dan Bravender.
I think somebody from the public has a comment.
Chairman, Commissioners, my name is Barry Heiken and I'm a resident in Silver Creek Township. And I think this just basically touches on what Chairman Moll was saying, but if the board allows this proposal, I think you basically can't stop, because as this applicant did, he referenced those other homes on the smaller lots that are already there that were allowed pre-zoning ordinances. But future applicants will do the same thing as far as bringing up what you allow here today. So basically saying, why can you stop mine when you allowed it here? And that's all I had today. Thank you.
Did you get the name?
Barry? Mr. Bravender?
Well, this may be a question for Greg. The township notes here, they approved the request, but in their approval, they wanted the 22.5 acre lot to remain ag land with no further splits or divisions allowed. Is that something that we can do?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Bravender, we're here for rezoning today, correct?
Right.
No, you can't do that right now.
Not at the rezoning, so.
No, not at the rezoning.
What the township is, I think, indicating is something that would already be the case, is it's already zoned and it only has one entitlement, it's being used. The only way to create another lot is through rezoning, whether it's 5 acres or 10 acres. The remainder of the ag land would not be entitled to any more building sites. That's a given. That's already
Right.
the circumstance.
But if it's rezoned because it's next to an R2A already.
So to make sure it's not next to an R2A. Presented to you is that there are a number of lots of record in the area that are similar to the R2A standards.
Yep.
Not through rezoning to R2A, but based on being able to be split out decades ago. And that it's in the land use plan as AR, and the land use plan does have language that under certain circumstances, rezoning can go down from AR. R1, R2 has to be riparian. R2 is supposed to be infill to areas that have already been developed through rezoning. And you'll notice in the land use plan, developed is also used again and has quotes around it. We don't have a definition of developed. The planning commission and county board needs to determine these type of requests.
That answer your question?
Not entirely. Because looking into the future, I don't see how we can say that the 22.5 acres could never be split or divided.
No.
Well, correct. So at a
That's
CUP,
what the town board was asking. That's why I brought that up.
well, you're correct. So we talk about this sometimes. At a CUP, you would be stating what the cases are now. Even on a deed restriction of the house, we would write no more homes unless property is rezoned or there's changes in the future. So no, we can't say a person can't try to do anything 20 years down the line.
But at this point in time, my understanding, Sean, is that 20 or 22 acres that's going to be remaining would be deed restricted unless it was rezoned, and it would be added as part of the other 83 acres we have out there.
That's correct, and that would be also the case if you just divided off the existing house on 2 acres. The remainder would be deed restricted to no more houses, but that doesn't mean future attempts can't be made or things in the land use plan or ordinances might change.
But
We can't
Sean,
lock it in.
right, and that's kind of like you coming back here, you already had it as a ag res, you came and took it back and put it back to agriculture, so then you could come back around and to do this. And once you get, just say, once you were to complete this process, another few months down the road, you could sell that 22 acres or something else could happen, and then all of a sudden they come in and say, we want to turn this into ag res and, you know, try to change the zoning again. We can't say no to that because everybody has the ability to come in here and ask.
Correct.
And then that's why we're here to try to adhere to the ordinance.
Yep.
And an R2A isn't in the land use plan per se for this. I mean, if you were coming in here asking for, you're gonna split everything up in 10-acre lots, you know, you put the other stuff back and you're gonna come in here at all the property and you wanna go 10-acre lots, it's in the land use plan for those 10-acre lots. Like you say, if you met all the criterias and everything met, your road frontages and all that stuff, not saying we would approve it, but it would be much easier to adhere to the ordinance is why it's laid out and it's already in the comprehensive plan to be ag res. We're here, what you're asking for, it's not in our ordinance, it's a smaller lot in the area than what our ordinance is. I hear what you're saying, by pre-ordinance there are smaller lots in the area, they are accessing the road, but right now we have to look at the whole county, all of Wright County, not just a mile or two down the road.
I agree.
There's a lot of properties in the Silver Creek Township, the Clearwater Township, Monticello Township, some of these that are bordering residential areas in ag land, it's in agriculture. You know, how do we say no? That it's got to be unique. We have our latitudes.
Yeah.
But it's got to fit and it has to be unique. And that's
So my understanding from speaking with Sean and going through this process, because we've been working on this for 6 months.
Yep.
And stuff, is that through the AR, which is the area that is in, the ag residential, that there are certain conditions that would allow us to go down from a 10-acre parcel down to a 5-acre parcel and stuff. Certain conditions being we're preserving ag land, we're using natural barriers, or it's unfeasible or impractical or too costly because of wetlands or something like that to be able to access the other part of the property. Years ago, this was rezoned, and it was a 10 acres lot, was split.
Yep.
And stuff, and my brother was gonna build on it. Where he wanted to build on was way in the back of the property. The problem being is that to get back there was impractical.
right.
And stuff, and it never ever got built. And they never, deeded it out to him or anything like that at that point in time and stuff. So looking at what the situation is and the uniqueness of this property with the, the amount of, ponds and wetlands and stuff, and trying to preserve that ag land, and now tying it to our other farm to take and make sure it's, it stays as ag land and productive and stuff. We're trying to follow in with what the AR guidelines are, but our one deviation is because of the uniqueness of the property and the situation that you have with the wetlands that you have to deal with, that makes it impractical to take and add the back piece to it and not keep the farmland with the farmland. So, and then with the consistency of the area and stuff, and I understand it was pre-zoning ordinances, but when I read the paperwork, it's my understanding that we should be consistent with what that area is. That's why I brought up with what the smaller lots that are in there, and utilizing almost the exact property lines as the east property lines of those properties that come up Bolton actually become almost the exact back line, the east line for this new lot, and stays in consistence with the backdrop of the 10-acre piece that my mom and dad split off with the house and buildings. So my understanding was that they can deviate from that 10 acres, provided that we've met every other requirement in the AR requirements other than the size of the lot based on the uniqueness of the property. And that was my understanding, and that's what we're requesting.
Ed,
Mr. Chair?
go ahead, Dan. Go ahead.
I would, in fairness to the applicant, I would just soon make a motion for a site inspection.
I was just gonna ask for that. The same,
All right.
same. I think, like you're saying, the uniqueness of the property, maybe we should come out, take a look at it, drive around the area, a little bit, so the board here can get a little bit of a feel for what you're talking about and the uniqueness of the property. So.
Be a good idea.
Sure.
And there's also, it was brought up about some wetland issues that, and so maybe when we're out there, you could be prepared to address that too at the same time.
Yep.
Okay.
That's part of it becomes part of the uniqueness of the property and stuff, why he never built on where he wanted to anyway, so.
Okay.
Yes, are you willing to make that a motion, Dan?
I made that motion.
All right, do I have a second for continue it to a site inspection?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Do I have any discussion on it?
March 18th, I assume?
Yeah, I would assume, because that's when we have a site inspection already set up. Can we get the notices out then in time?
We can.
Okay. There's no other discussion, we'll have a roll call vote.
Ravender, aye.
Felger?
Ravender votes aye.
Felger, aye.
Tanner, aye.
Ketchmark, aye.
Maul votes aye. So we'll have a site inspection out there on the 18th, meaning.
No,
No.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. We are needing a motion for the site inspection, and it's continued to the meeting of the March 18th.
18th, okay.
Site inspection.
We've already scheduled a site inspection for March 2nd, leaving that agenda open in case we had any continuations today. And yes, we will be able to get that noticed in time to do this on the 2nd.
Okay. So if you can, if nothing else, call tomorrow to find out approximately what time we will be out there, because we have some ahead of you.
Okay.
Or depending on how they set the schedule up for our route.
Okay.
But we'll come out and take a look at the property.
Very good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next would be Valley Paving, once we are ready here.
Thanks, guys.
Yep, thank you. starting to get nervous. Both my bosses in Collins, one in Nebraska, the other one's down there. That's with both of them already.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Getting nervous. Gotta hurry up here. I hope I don't create too much controversy on it when I hit it, but. You guys will shoot me down, but I figured I'm gonna do it. All right, can you give your names, please, for the record?
John Wokosh with Valley Paving.
And Joe Holthouse, the owner.
All right, Sean, when you're ready.
And we have a person online, if you could identify yourself for the record, please.
Sure, this is Nick Bono with Carlson McCain.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, the property is located in Monticello Township. It is zoned agriculture. It's in the land use plan as agriculture. You're familiar with the property with solar farms and existing gravel operations. The request is to, lack of a better term, reopen a previously operated in gravel pit that was reclaimed to do additional gravel mining and operations. We've got the project area, mining plans. I'm going to let the applicant and the person who did the design work on this describe the gravel operation.
Okay. You want to take it from there?
Yes, it is an existing pit. There is quite a bit of resource left. We want to work the perimeter, starting in phase one, which would be the southwest quadrant, and then working to the west to the 30-foot setback there. And then and there's also material in the floor yet, probably about 10 to 12 feet down yet. That's very suitable material. So it would be the plan to work the perimeter around the outsides and then go down in the floor.
Okay. Anything else you want to add to start with?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Sean, do you have anyone from the public that would like to comment?
I will ask, Mr. Chair, is there anybody from the public beyond the person representing the applicant wanting to provide testimony on the Valley paving request in the Holthouse pit? We did have some submissions by letter, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Sean. I guess I would start out with is we've got some information here about potential of the Hall Road and coming off of Highway 25 for traffic. The Hall Road, I mean, has that been clarified as to the easement coming in and out of the pit?
Yeah, we are looking at using the 25. There is an easement through there. We've been in contact with William Holthouse. We're still trying to work through that. But yeah, we haven't came to an agreement yet quite on that.
Okay.
It looks like the safest way. There's turn lanes, there's bypass lanes in and out. So at this point in time, we have not finalized that yet.
Okay. Is there anyone else here from the board that would like to comment or ask questions? Sean, this property, this is right next to the solar panel farm or the solar farm that is on hold. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and it's one property altogether for zoning purposes. There are different PID numbers, but this parcel and the parcel to the west have road frontage on the county road and are at this time is one parcel.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Just wanted to clarify that.
Yep.
Is there any other comments, concerns here from the board?
I mean, I guess I know the property quite well. We've been out there several times.
Correct.
So, we were out there one time when it was a pit and the other time it was all reclaimed, so. I guess I don't have any issues with it. It's a long ways away from any buildings. I think the gun club is right to the west of that, right?
Yeah, right to the.
That's the closest.
I guess my only thought is that the township didn't make final approval. They were asking a site inspection, but I also agree with you, Commissioner Bravender, that we've been out there multiple times in the last few years and as early as basically a month and a half ago. You know, so I too am aware of the property and where it lays and, you know, the neighboring area.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Sean?
can I offer up a comment on that?
Yes, please.
Yes, so the township did formally respond to not make a recommendation. They wanted more time. They wanted to do a site inspection, and they requested one from the county too. I guess the differences that you might see here is I don't think we've ever really had a focus on the Hall Road existing situation on State Highway 25 for bypass lanes and turn lanes. And we did receive a comment from the property owner to the east and also representing from the property owner to the south, the Monticello Sportsman's Club, who also has access onto this Hall Road location. So I don't know how much attention was focused on these three land uses, well, potentially four: solar, gravel pit, existing gravel pit, sportsman's club, and the circumstance of their access.
So with that, just with that being said, you have access onto a county road if needed. I mean, the Hall Road is there, but like Sean is bringing up, there's already 4 properties that are using it. I mean, what is the agreement on that?
The agreement with the Joe Holt House, the agreement with the Hall Road, the actual easement runs with the land. So it is part of the land that I bought, the Hall Road.
Okay.
It's an existing easement that specifically states it's for solar, farming, and mining activities.
Okay. And that
So, Mr. Chair,
go ahead, Sean.
I guess the point of my comment was, unless the planning commission disagrees, we don't have a formal recommendation from the township yet.
Correct.
So I think we're unlikely to make a motion. Since it's being continued and we are driving by here next week on March 2nd, if the planning commission feels, okay, maybe we do put our attention strictly on the access and making sure we don't have any conflicts, that would be an opportunity to do that.
Okay.
I'm not saying we can solve it from a private landowner standpoint or already in place easements or that we've issued previous CUPs. But if somebody's going to testify that there's cars coming and going from a sportsman's club and there's maybe an improvement can be made to gate, to monitor, to control truck traffic, seeing it might be beneficial.
Okay. So I guess, do I have any comment or recommendations here from the board?
I'll make a motion that we do a site inspection.
and continue it until,
Continue it until the 18th, is that right?
I think so.
March 18th?
That's our next meeting, correct?
And site inspection along
March
with
2nd.
second. Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to continue with the site inspection. Is there any other discussion? If there's no other discussion, we'll have a roll call vote.
Lavender, aye.
Belger, aye.
Tanner, aye.
Ketchmark, aye.
Small, aye. Motion carries. So we'll come out and have a site inspection. Probably call the office to see what our time schedule is as to when we'll be out there. That works for you, please?
Yep, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next, once we're ready here, will be Hoffman Construction for the next 5 items. Before we get set up, we're going to do a chairman break here for 5 minutes.
It took about 5 minutes for a break here. But let me wipe it down and you can have a seat.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah. Got a lot of fill to get rid of, huh?
Yeah, lots of work to do in general.
Yeah, I guess. They proceeding pretty much on schedule, or are they a little behind out there?
We're a little behind, we'll catch up.
Yeah, good weather makes a big difference, huh?
Yeah.
Sure.
Pretty cleared out, huh?
Yeah, all to ourselves.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, invite.
ready, we'll call the meeting back to order. Sean?
Yes, I'm back.
Okay, whenever you're ready, sir.
Okay. Who's present down at the
Yeah,
county
can you
board?
give your name, can you give your names, please, for the record?
Tom Dauberthien, Hoffman Construction.
Jared Fleming, Hoffman Construction.
Okay, Sean?
Can you ask if they have, is there anybody online representing with them?
No.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, to initiate things on this item, I'm going to request the applicant describe the overall reason for the material and the project, because there's multiple sites it'd be going to. This particular first site is zoned agriculture. The land use plan is agriculture. I'm sorry, it's zoned agriculture. It's in the land use plan for AR. An existing property that has improvements, a house, outbuildings. For a frame of reference, it is next door to the gravel pit request that was continued for a site inspection. The request is to bring in excess material from the Interstate 94 project and build a series of berms on the property. And we've been provided cross sections and landscaping plans. A thing to note on this project and other ones, we do have this Excel, the power line location and easements. We discussed that at the gravel pit design. So we're in a position of, if approvals are given, deciding to say one of the conditions is, of course, you have to meet all the requirements of any Excel easement. I'll turn it over to the chair.
All right. I guess we'll let you start with some of what.
So in general, we're with Hoffman Construction, we're part of the HCPCI design build project group building I-94 between Clearwater and Monticello. Within our design, the design is ongoing in a design build project. The design is still continuing. Our designers have come up with excess material that we now have to try and get rid of off-site, off a right-of-way, DOT right-of-way. So with that, we went around to look for private properties that would benefit from the material, either filling in a low spot or there are people that, you know, we've talked to up and down the corridor that would like a noise site berm away from the highway. So those properties we negotiated with and talked to and came up with agreements, and that's where we are here today. These sites that we're proposing to get rid of the excess fill material coming off the highway.
Okay. Sean, do you have any more?
That's just a general breakdown of, I guess we can go through each site if you guys have questions per each site.
Yep. I'm sure we will as we go on.
The Excel Energy, yes, you know, we can put I talked to Sean earlier, or Scott, we can put a contingency in there that we will get all the permits. I've talked to Excel Energy. They've given us their parameters, but we didn't pursue any more until we would get permission and, you know, if the site's approved today, then we'll start that process with them. But right now their conditions are 25 feet away from their base of their poles with any work or excavation or fill. And then the height of the fill that can be within their right of way, he said generally 15 to 20 feet, as long as you're staying that 25 feet away. But that all has to get approved through their engineering. So once these are approved, we'll send the site plans to their engineer for approval.
Okay.
So the height of the berms could get adjusted on the ones that are next to. There is one on the Schauble property that goes under the line. So those heights that we have designed could get adjusted with Excel Energy.
Okay. Sean, do we have anybody that would like to comment from the public online?
Earlier, we had a township representative. Barry, are you still online?
I am here, Sean. I don't have anything to say right at this point. Maybe as we go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Just
you.
make sure, yep.
Yep, thanks.
So on record, we do have the township approving of this request. And each one's a separate application, the same reason, but a different piece of property. So we do need to review each property.
Sean and Mr. Chair, someone named Scott did put a comment into the chain. I don't know if they wanted to provide something orally here as part of the meeting, but I would just note for people online that the chat option in the Teams meeting is not part of the official record of this meeting.
I think that might have been our Scott.
Is it our Scott? It came up as a guest, so I didn't know.
No, it's not our Scott. He's sitting here wondering, what are you talking about?
Oh, okay. Scott Spears, he does not have a microphone. I will enter it into the record. There was a description by the applicant of agreements. And the question was, whom are they with? I'm assuming we're talking about MnDOT and disposing of this material.
Yeah, and we have agreements with the property owners.
I mean, you have agreements with everybody, right? The property owners, MnDOT, contractor contracts.
Yeah, we have a contract with MDOT for the highway project. Then each site, we have agreements with the property owners to build what we're proposing.
So on that note, we of course have the signatures of every property owner on these requests. They're not able to just show up and dispose of materials. It's assumed that by signature, we have agreement by the property owner.
Okay. I guess I'll start out. One of my first questions I had for you is, why are we not hauling it back to the gravel pit?
To
all of this extra fill. I mean, we're pulling a massive amount out of the pit locally, which, you know, we've permitted night hauling, we've permitted all kinds of things that we normally don't because it's an I-94 state project, different things. And a lot of times, I don't know if this particular reclamation on this pit, what the reclamation plan is right off the top, but a lot of pits are saying, you know, they'll open up and then they'll haul material back and we're not gonna have a big hole in the ground.
It's a cost basis. This once we're into this phase of work, we'll be using off-road big heavy equipment versus dump trucks.
Okay.
So that's where we have found, we went and located properties along the right of way in the specific areas we need to have that haul as short as possible. To put material in a dump truck and to haul it, 8-10 miles is just huge cost. That would be the reason.
So you're gonna be doing it with excavators?
And off-road trucks. Correct.
I guess I live in that area, I go through that area, and I know in this gravel pit that is potentially, we're gonna go and view, the neighbor, one of them where you're putting the berm has got a large dirt pile, and neighbors were concerned about that dirt pile and, being there and stuff, and now we're going to go to work and put large berms and dirt piles along the freeway. I don't know, is that a precedence we want to start doing, or because once I-94 does it, what stops people from down the road wanting to push up berms and dirt piles along for screening? I guess I'd like to hear what some of the other board members have to say or what their thoughts are. I just question when we were permitting these gravel pits, it's always been a complaint from all of the neighbors in the area of putting these big holes in the grounds. And I understand the cost. I mean, I get cost. But at the same token, we're hauling it out of the pit. Now, if we have excess, why aren't we hauling it back to the pit for reclamation?
Yeah, and that
is my thoughts.
And that's a good thought. And if it was cost effective, definitely that would be something we would and we have looked into, and we have hauled some material back in there for reclamation. But it just really is a huge cost compared to these sites that we're proposing that are close.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mike.
As long as you're bringing up cost a couple times and prohibitive to get down to the gravel pit, I have to ask, is there money changing hands between you and the places you're hauling them across the road?
There is no money changing hands. These agreements are more or less, we try and find things that'll benefit, the property owner, filling in a low spot to make the field more level, building a noise berm so they don't listen to the noise of the highway. And just to go back, these aren't just piles of dirt pushed up, they'll be landscaped, seeded down with a native grass seed or, a highway type grass seed. They're not just gonna be a big ugly berm pushed up in a pile. DOTs all over, the area, build noise berms. Noise berms are a cost-effective way, earthen berms are a cost-effective way for noise control along highways, compared to a noise fence or noise wall, so.
Yeah, and I agree with that, but we're not in a city area, we're rural. Where you're proposing these things are rural. And when you come out to the rural, you're driving down the freeway, you like to look around and see what you're going by. It's not like you're in the city or having heavy housing developments where.
But this project did fall under the parameters to, we had to meet the noise requirements, and there are earthen berms being built. Mm-hmm. There's noise fences being built, and there is noise walls being built already. But those are within the DOT right of way, not outside of the right of way.
Between Monticello and Clearwater?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had to meet the noise requirements for the NEPA permit.
Okay.
Sure.
Go ahead, Mike.
So as long as you mention the vegetation and planting and fertilizing and all that, I see that's mentioned as part of the proposal. If it's approved, all fill must be clean, usable fill. The site should be permanently landscaped, turf established as soon as possible. So is that up to your company to do, or?
Yeah, so we fall within the MDOT regulations under the SWIP for the highway project. So once the sites are approved, then we have to go and get amendment to our highway SWIP. And then once that is approved, then we actually go to the MPCA and apply for the actual erosion control permit. And then all the erosion control, initial perimeter control, site control during construction, and the finished landscaping erosion control is all done with HCPCI, not particular Hoffman, but our subcontractor.
So they're responsible for seeding the berms that you built?
Correct.
And all costs that go with it?
And costs.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
How long do you see this as going on to finish this?
Well, we're starting work April 1st is our goal, and these will all be finished by November 1st. Each site might be independently opened up and closed separately.
Yep.
But depending on the size of the site, there's some of them that are smaller than others. It could be anywhere from a 2-month, 3-month process to open it up, get the berms or the fills placed and put back together.
So just give me a picture. You're hauling, okay? You're hauling everything in there. This is the big disruption is the hauling. So you figure that's a go till November, the hauling?
No, the project has to be done by November 1st. Our part of it will probably be done mid-September.
It's really hard. I mean, I see that the township has approved all these requests. They've, and I know it doesn't benefit a lot of dense areas as far as residences, but residents that are getting it, it is benefiting them for noise.
Right.
And if Silver Creek has approved all of them?
There's 4 in Clearwater and 1 in Silver Creek.
Oh, yeah, that's right, but the Clearwater's been approved too.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Sean.
Barry Heikkinen from Silver Creek is requesting to be recognized.
Okay, go ahead, Barry.
Chairman and board members, this wasn't a unanimous vote on the part of the township. It did pass. But, we heard Hoffman Construction mention cost numerous times as well. What some of our residents said is, and I even thought this as well, but if they were to just drive by and dump that on the old railroad bed along 75 and continue west to the next property, it's across where they would have, that proposed gravel pit as well. It would be faster, it would be easier, but and it would benefit a number of homes from any noise of this potential gravel pit. Right now, as it's proposed, he's not only dumping his dirt, he's building a berm for them as well. And that's, to me, if we're to buy this argument of cost effectiveness, I just can't see driving, 400 feet across the ag land to build this 20-foot high berm, 10 feet across at the top with 52,000 yards of dirt. I just don't see the cost effectiveness of that just to benefit one property owner.
Mr. Chair?
Is that all, Barry?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mike?
So, and it's a business decision in part by the applicant here on this part, but to mention that next door proposed gravel pit is speculation at this point on if it's gonna go through and be passed. So I don't know how that's just not a sure thing to say that is a sure solution or alternative location. But can Sean weigh in on what Chairman Mole brought up about reclamation arrangements with these other pits? Because I know, isn't it, sometimes there's an arrangement where like a 1-for-1, you haul out, you haul in. Is there any arrangements like that in some of those area gravel pits where this would apply and bringing it back there?
Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, I think that's probably beyond my scope. I'm not privy of any agreements with gravel pit operators and bringing back material. We have standards for reclaiming. We have CUPs for mining and operations. We don't necessarily have requirements or just everything falls in place where a project like this can be done and mine out and bring in at the same time.
I guess, Sean, and when we do our reclamations, and I mean, we've looked at a lot of them come through here, but many of the gravel pit owners or the operators of those gravel pits, it seems like even the one that is pending now have all said they're going to replace, what they take out, they're going to replace and do these different things. But at the end of the day, most of the time that isn't written into the reclamation, where it's on record, is it?
Well, Mr. Chair, no, we have reclamation plans, and I would say the opposite. Usually they don't dig a hole and fill it completely back in. The reclamation is about side slopes and making the basin flat and not have standing water, bring in suitable soil to turn back to farming. Now, in this case, the one next door is representing material being brought back in someday if it's approved and excavated, but that's a long ways down the road, certainly not now.
Right, but on that one that's pending, we have all of the plans for that one is basically reclamation like the county usually requires. They did say they were going to, like you said, fill it back in or as it goes. But at the end of the day, it's really never been written into our requirements that it has to be filled in.
No, I don't think that would be practical or cost effective for the land use overall. Now, the pit we had south of Buffalo for all those years, the Faldy pit.
Yep.
Now, if circumstance would have allowed this location or that location to be right on top of the interstate, and it was opened and unreclaimed and had issues, that's when you potentially could match up these type of projects.
Okay, thank you, Sean.
I think Barry had another comment.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. One more thing that I just wanted to add, I'm sorry to keep interrupting here, but we did give Hoffman Construction permission, and it was granted by your board as well, on the eastbound lanes in 94, about probably a mile or two northwest of this location on the south side on the eastbound lanes. They do have some room to drop off some more gravel, and maybe the representatives from Hoffman Construction have an idea of how much room they have at that location as well. So we don't have to, as Chairman Mold pointed out, we don't have to have these big berms all along the freeway. We have one location that's already been approved And how much dirt could they fit in that without opening up another location? That's all I had. Thank you.
That the Wally site you're referring to?
Yeah, it'd be the
Yeah, that one only holds, I believe that was about 25,000 yards.
Yeah,
That one's pretty tight for room.
the smaller area per se. Is
I
there
guess, you
anyone-
know, trying to mingle the next door neighbor pit, which we have nothing to do with.
Right.
And suggesting a berm, wouldn't that be within that site? You know, applicant, that you guys could say, you need to build berms around this site? Wouldn't that be part of that applicant site?
And we have done that on other pits and.
And I think every pit I've ever seen, that's a requirement, is they have to build a site berm around their site, but that's just a suggestion.
Yeah, no, and we do have that on most of the pits that we do permit, you know, in the Annandale area and different places. They've got to have a berm around it and then a tree buffer or some type of a buffer. You're correct. Anyone else here from the commission that would like to comment? There's no other comments. How does the commission want to proceed?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the land alteration request according to the plans and description provided by the applicant with the following conditions. Applicant must obtain valid permission to do grading and work within the power line easement. Hauling across County State Aid Highway 75 must be done with the appropriate safety precautions, including flagging or signage per Wright County highway requirements. Hours of operation to be as noted in the narrative, with a majority of the work to be done between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. Nighttime work should be kept to a minimum. All fill must be clean, usable fill, free of any contaminants. And 5, the site should be permanently landscaped and turf established as soon as possible.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that with discussion.
Motion was made and seconded. Do we have some discussion? Dan?
Is this a nighttime operation?
This particular site would be daytime operation with some limited nighttime potential. That's the reason I wrote that in the narrative.
Because it says 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. That's what I was wondering on the motion.
So, Mr. Chair,
Sean?
we do have applications indicating, so this is not mining, that the hauling and dumping will be done or partially done between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. and nighttime work should be kept for a minimum on this one. The other items have more substantial nighttime work.
I want a clarification on that. It was,
okay.
The way it was worded, it looked like it was nighttime hauling, so.
Well, we do, but those are on the other ones.
Those are on the other ones. This one is daytime.
I'm sorry, you know why, Sean? Because I'm reading the other one.
Oh, you're not even on the right page.
They're worded the same.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Is there any other discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Sean?
is it open still for public comment?
I have a motion on the floor, a second, and we are in discussion, so I would like to proceed with this one.
Excuse me, I just wanted
No,
to.
we don't, I'm not open to the public right now. I have a motion on the floor and a second,
Okay.
and I prefer to continue on with this motion. Was there any other discussion between the board? If not, we'll have a roll call vote.
Ravender, aye.
Felger, no.
Tanner, no.
Ketchmark, aye.
Maul is no. Motion fails. What is your suggestion how to proceed from here, Sean? Or,
Well, Mr. Chair, if you're looking to deny this, then we need to have written findings for denial. So if that's the route that the Planning Commission would like to take, the motion would be to direct staff to draft findings consistent with denial to be presented at the meeting on March 18th.
all right, how does the the remainder of the board want to proceed? We are missing a member. We're missing 2 members, so the other option would be to continue until we have a full board next meeting.
Mr. Chair?
Ken?
Yes, the reason I voted no is that I believe there are some legitimate comments that the township representative wished to make, and perhaps some alternatives as to where this fill could go. So I would prefer rather than move for findings for denial, simply continue this.
Okay, you can make that a motion, Ken.
Okay, that's my motion. We continue until the March 18th meeting for further discussions between perhaps the township officials, residents, and the contractor.
All right, do I have a second? I will second that motion. So we have a motion made and seconded to continue this until next meeting so that we can have more discussion with the township and the public. Is there any other discussion? If there's no other discussion, we'll have a roll call vote on continuing.
Carpenter, no.
Felger, aye.
Tanner, no.
Ketchmark, no.
Mall, aye. Motion fails for no. So, how do we want to proceed? We want,
I'm really kind of perplexed here because we have a 6-2 vote from the township to go ahead with this. And they're very well in tune with this area. We've been out there ourselves several times. And I understand the logistics part of things very well. Been in the gravel hauling for many years. I understand the logistics part of things. This is going to be, the way they're describing this being done, it's going to be the shortest window of impact on this project that you can imagine. You start hiring trucks to go in there, you'll see major impact running up and down the roads. Major impact. Berms along I-94, you see them everywhere. You see them everywhere. And when they're done nice, I have no problem with them. That's my comment on this. I really respect the township on this, and they've done their homework, so I'm siding with them. And
okay. Any other comment from the board?
Mr. Chair,
Sean?
at the risk of adding too much here, the township representative that provided testimony before did send a message that he wanted to note. He wanted clarification on the time frame. I assume when the hauling would be done. So I just wanted to note that.
Okay. I guess if you want to answer that.
I think he did. He was saying November and December, so
yeah.
I assume it could be clarified. But the proposed motion that was read did not necessarily spell that out. So I think that's why he sent the question.
applicant said it had to be done by November, correct?
The highway project has to be substantially complete by November 1st. Means it has to be paved open to traffic, which our grading operations has to be done by early September to allow the rest of the operations behind us to get complete.
Does that help, Sean?
It does. I was just explaining why the question came up, that we had that testimony, and then I don't think our suggested motion included that.
I guess, Ken or Corey, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, could you, or Sean, could you please restate what you just spoke about relative to the motion?
Mr. Chair, now I'm starting to speak for somebody who is not testifying at the current moment. So now I'm concerned it is ping-ponging a little bit here. But if the suggested motion did not provide complete clarity on when this project was supposed to be done by, or if we said more something like a timely fashion, I think the Silver Creek representative was asking or concerned, was it defined enough? Now, is that the reason the motion failed? That's for the Planning Commission.
Well, I guess, Mr. Chair, my feeling is that if there's a definite timeline to this, perhaps a continuance is not in order, and I know that motion had failed. So going back to the original motion, if there's a way that I could perhaps vote in the affirmative, in other words, change my vote, I would be acceptable to that if that's appropriate.
Mr. Felger, I'd recommend you make a motion.
That's what I was gonna say. Ken, you can make a motion. We do not have a motion on the floor.
Okay. All right. Here we go. This is the motion under number 7. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. I would move to approve a land alteration request according to the plans and description provided by the applicant with the following conditions. 1, applicant must obtain a valid permission to do grading and work within the power line easement. 2, hauling across County Road 75 must be done with appropriate safety precautions, including flagging or signage per Wright County Highway Department requirements. 3, hours of operation to be as noted in the narrative, with the majority of the work to be done between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. Nighttime work should be kept to a minimum. 4, all fill must be clean, usable fill, free of any contaminants. And 5, the site should be permanently landscaped and turf established as soon as possible.
All right. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Is there any other discussion? If not, we'll have a roll call vote.
Ravender, aye.
Felger, aye.
Tanner, no.
Ketchmark, aye.
Maul, no. Motion carries 3-2. All right. We will move on to number 8. Also with Hoffman Construction. Sean, for the record, do we need their names again each time?
Right.
I don't think we need the name of the people each time, but we do have to open up for public comment every time.
Yes.
Right.
So we are on number 8 with Hoffman Construction. Sean, when you are ready.
Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, this project is in Clearwater Township, zoned agriculture and the land use plan agriculture. Approximate area of grading, existing conditions, and then to fill in low areas as shown in the proposed cross-section. I again would ask the applicant to describe the project in detail.
Okay.
This site is another site that is just a field right now that we will be stripping the topsoil off. bringing in clean fill to fill in the low spots, to raise the field up approximately, this one is, I think it was like 8 feet on average, and then apply that same topsoil back on top. And if the land is not used as fall farming, then we would seed it down with a temporary type erosion, mix like a winter wheat or a rye.
Would you strip the topsoil back?
We strip the existing topsoil off, we bring in the clean fill, and then we put his existing topsoil back on.
Yep, okay. Is there any comments from the public here, Sean?
I don't believe so.
Is there any comments here from the commission?
So, Mr. Chair, I was reading through the Clearwater Township notes that, so apparently they approved all 4 properties in one motion, it looks like, according to Clearwater here. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, we went through and described every site individually, and then they made one motion to approve them all.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Mike?
Okay, so now this is where the hours overnight operation came in, and apparently the landowners that you're gonna be dumping this on are expecting and okay with those hours of operation?
Yeah, the landowners are, and we didn't have any, adjoining property owners, at the town level that were concerned. The reason this segment is from Clearwater to Hasty, and this segment is the interstate is being widened to the outside, and then ultimately a asphalt overlay section. So the traffic here stays in their concurrent lanes. So all this work has to be done at night, with lane closures and traffic control. So that's why these next 4 sites are mainly at night with some daytime operation, but it'd be mostly at night.
But these ones don't cross the road, right?
No, these are strictly coming right off through the right-of-way fence, so we would cut the right-of-way fence, go into the property that way.
Okay, thank you.
And this particular one, you're more filling in a hole and restoring it back to farmland or back to
This doesn't have any
land.
type of berm, it's just a.
Right. And I guess that's the way I was reading it and looking at the prints.
And it's not a low land as far as there's no wetlands or anything involved, it's just a low part of the field.
Any other discussion? Not?
Prepared to make a motion?
Dan?
I'd like to make a motion to approve a land alteration request according to the plans and description provided by the applicant. With the following conditions: number 1, hours of operation to be as noted in the narrative, with majority of the work to be done between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. Number 2, all fill must be clean, usable fill, free any contaminants. Number 3, site should be permanently landscaped and turf established as soon as possible.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, roll call vote.
Ravender, aye.
That's me.
Felger, aye.
Tanner, aye.
Ketchmark, aye.
Ball, aye. All right. Motion carries. Number 9, Hoffman Construction. Sean, whenever you're ready.
Yes, Mr. Chair, property is also in Clearwater Township, zoned agriculture, in the land use plan as transition area. Approximate fill area with the yellow line denoting a berm location. The contours of the berm and the filled in area west of it. A cross section, I believe, and then including the berm. Again, to note that this is obviously the Excel power line territory and easement, so the same requirement of needing to meet their standards Again, if the applicant could describe the project in detail.
So this is the Shabel Trust property. When we approached Ron and his wife, the drawing right there is a little off. They want to actually come all the way back towards their driveway with the noise berm. So our drawing shows that, not the yellow line, but so we'd actually be putting a noise berm actually between the highway and their house and then continue it all the way down in the field. That's where I was saying we'd go under the line that crosses the highway, the XL Energy line. Right now that berm, 15-foot high berm, that's what XL suggested us that we start with. Then they will tell us the exact height under their high line once their engineers look at it. So this is kind of a three-part site. You got the berm along the highway. It's kind of a separate site, and then we have a bigger hole that used to be a sand pit that we're reclaiming and filling back in. So that's partly.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that area.
So he wants that filled back in, and then there's a small hole, low spot up in the field to the west that he wants filled in. So it's kind of like three different little sites, but we just include it all in one property.
So the berm will come all the way past the building site there to the east?
Yeah, the berm's gonna come all the way down almost to his driveway.
Okay.
To the end of Grover there, yep.
Okay.
But the way I'm reading this berm, this isn't a 20-foot berm. This is only about a 12-foot.
This one was, I think, 15, I believe was the max height there.
Max, yeah. This one
The only
isn't near
reason
as
is
tall.
because it's limited, you know, the higher you go, the wider you get in front of his house there. We don't want to take too many trees down, so we limited the width of it. But he's still going to get the effect of dissipating the noise.
Okay. All right, is there any comments from the public, Sean?
I don't have record of anybody from the public.
All right, is there any comment here from the board?
Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion. I would like to make a motion to approve a land alteration request according to the plans and description provided by the applicant with the following conditions. Number one, hours of operation to be noted in the narrative with a majority of the work to be done between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. Number two, all fill must be clean, usable fill, free of any contaminants. Number three, the site should be permanently landscaped and turf established as soon as possible. And four, applicant must obtain valid permission to do grading and work within the power line easement if applicable.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any other discussion? There's no other discussion. Roll call vote.
Ravender, aye.
Felger, aye.
Tanner, aye.
Ketchmark, aye.
Wall, aye. Motion carries. All right, we'll move on to number 10. Sean, when you are ready.
Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, again in Clearwater Township, zoned agriculture, land use plan transition area, existing developed site with a farm field on it, approximate grading location, filling in the cross section, and again, if the applicant could describe in detail.
Okay.
Again, this site is right along the highway right away. It's a smaller of the sites, but we agreed with the property owner that the existing land now is kind of a rolling and a steeper slope going down to the northwest. And we're gonna take that grade and make it about a 2% slope to establish a nice flatter field and less erodible field for him. I think it's about a average 6 foot fill going across there.
Okay.
And same thing with the other ones, we would strip the topsoil off, bring in the clean fill, put the topsoil back on, and then reestablish. And again, this is a ag field now. If it does not get some type of winter farming, then we would have to, by the MPCA, would have to establish some type of temporary erosion control turf.
Cover crop or some type.
Yeah, mostly it's a winter wheat or rye. It just gets plowed under in spring.
Okay, is there anybody from the public on, Sean?
I don't have record of anybody.
All right, we'll come back up here to the board. Is there any comments or questions? If not,
Prepared to make a motion?
Mr.
Dan?
Chair, this is Ken.
Ken, do you have a comment?
I just wanted to ensure that the township did approve this one. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, very well. Thank you.
Ken?
I'd like to make a motion to approve a land alteration request according to the plans and description provided by the applicant. With the following conditions: number one, hours of operation to be as noted in the narrative, with a majority of the work to be done between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. Number two, all fill must be clean, usable fill, free of any contaminants. Number three, site should be permanent landscaped and turf established as soon as possible. Number four, applicant must obtain valid permission to do grading and work within the power line easement if applicable.
Great, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Do I have any discussion? There's no discussion. We'll have a roll call vote.
Ravender, aye.
Felger, aye.
Tanner, aye.
Ketchmark, aye.
Small, aye. Motion carries. We will move on to number 11 for Hoffman Construction. Sean, when you are ready.
Yes, again, Clearwater Township. The zoning is agriculture. It's in the land use plan as transition area. Another open farm field with some topography in low areas. Approximate grading area. Proposed contours. And a proposed cross-section. I will let the applicant describe the project.
Okay, if you want to take it.
So this is a larger site, but just still filling in some lower areas in the field. And with that, we were out there discussing this with the property owner. There is a property owner right where the red dot is, just to the north and east of this property. I forget the gentleman's name, but he actually was in favor of the idea because right now he has flooding issues coming off of the field. By raising the field up, that's going to slow that water down and help him in his situation as well. So same thing, stripping the topsoil off, bringing in clean fill, flattening the field out to like a 2% slope, and just kind of a general site improvement.
And this property is closer to Clearwater, correct?
Yeah, it's about a mile from the Clearwater exit.
Yeah. Okay. John, do we have anybody from the public?
No.
All right, we will bring it back up here to the board. Is there any questions or comments on this project?
Mr. Chair, could you have Mr. Riley go back to the profile? I'd like to know what direction the water will be, which direction is to the right here?
That is to the south towards I-94.
Toward 94, okay. So my thinking is that in that depressed area, as you can see there, that retains a bit of water that's not running out into the MnDOT right of way. But in the after situation, all of that is now going to run off toward the highway. Is that an acceptable condition?
I know what you're getting to, Ken, and I would say you are correct. It's going to run towards I-94, but the soils up there are sand. Water doesn't run up there where I'm from. It goes down.
Yeah, they're very granular soils.
And then the consistency of that fill being brought in, that's sand as well?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Is there any other comments here from the board?
Mr. Chair, I'm ready to make a motion.
Mike?
I'd like to make the motion to approve a land alteration request according to the plans and description provided by the applicant with the following conditions. Number one, hours of operation to be as noted in the narrative, with the majority of the work to be done between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. Number two, all fill must be clean, usable fill, free of any contaminants. And three, the site should be permanently landscaped and turf established as soon as possible.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any other discussion? If there's no other discussion, we'll have a roll call vote.
Bravender, aye.
Felger, aye.
Tanner, aye.
Ketchmark, aye.
Small, aye. Motion carries. I think we're finished.
Okay, thank you for your time and efforts and appreciate it.
Yep, thank you. Sean, do you have anything else that needs to be brought before the board?
I do not. Did you have anything, Greg?
Mr. Chair?
Ken?
Whatever happened to the discussion of, or at least discussion, I'd say, about moving our meeting to the evening so public participation may possibly be increased? Is there any discussion on that?
That's for that end of the table.
Well, I know how it went at the board meeting in January, but that was for general board meetings. Mr. Felger, were you aware of that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
January 5th, the first meeting of the year for the county board, that's when we set the board meetings and times. And for the county board anyway, I brought up that constituents wanted evening meetings, or not all of them, but to alternate. And the response I got back from the three commissioners that had been up here for a while was that they weren't interested in having any evening meetings for their own reasons.
Mr. Chair?
Sean?
Yeah, so reference, Mike, you wouldn't be aware of this, but so the planning commission normally meets in the evening. The county board obviously meets in the morning. So when COVID hit, the county board wasn't left with changing the schedule of when their meeting occurs, although they did schedule it virtually, implement restrictions on attendance. We changed our time. We went from the evening, from the afternoon, so we could have our technology people and staff at the courthouse, because we're running this meeting virtually and using more technology, such as streaming over YouTube. To Ken's question, pulling the trigger going back to the evening, I guess I wasn't the one that said emergency order, have a directive to have people work at home, run your meetings remotely as much as possible. So I don't have the ability to pull back off of that until it's done. Those measures have not been taken at the state level or the county level yet, whether I agree with it or not. I don't know if Greg has any thoughts.
Sean, I think you said it correctly. I mean, we're still operating underneath the governor's emergency powers, and the county still has its emergency powers. It hasn't revoked from almost a year ago. So I personally, I think Teams is working well in getting public participation. I'm not seeing anything too negative on this because we're allowing people to comment. I mean, the meeting in December had do we have close to 100 people involved, Sean, on that ordinance amendment? So when people want to show up, they can. We're making it easy for them to show up at their house remotely.
And I don't know if it makes you feel better, Ken, but what I know of what some other counties are doing, they're not even having applicants or portions of their planning commission in attendance. So at least we got those pieces in play, that the applicant for thorough questioning can come in if they feel more comfortable, like Mr. Danielson did today. And we do have planning commission members that can come in. I understand the public concern that these are public hearings. You don't have a public hearing if it presents issues for the public to testify. If I had another mechanism to put in play to help that, beyond what we already do, I would. But like Greg said, we're still under the governor order, and if we had a landfill meeting in 2 months and it was in the evening, I would have no mechanism to be able to control 200 people in a small room.
Well, my point wasn't anything of that nature, moving away from Team or other platforms. I'm certainly in favor of that. I just thought there was some discussion several weeks ago, perhaps months ago, relative to having these team meetings in the evening because people work during the day.
Correct.
And perhaps they can't comment. But, you know, as probably Greg will agree with me, they have ample opportunity to write a letter or email. So perhaps it's not such a big deal. I was just kind of following up on some discussion that I thought I had heard relative to our planning and zoning meetings.
And we might have, and that could continue down the road, maybe we get out in the woods here, but my opinion is if we're going back to evening, we should do that when we go back to what we used to do. That we had an open door and we did not have restrictions.
Right, and we probably didn't need so many staff on hand either, i.e. meaning the IT staff and so on. I agree with you.
And that would help if we go back to the way it was, then I'm not as worried about streaming and virtual and technology and staff.
If I can interject here, I mean, we've been doing Zoom court since this started back in March, and it's been probably one of the biggest changes for the court system ever because people can now attend from wherever they want. And it's actually, I think, improved efficiencies with the court system quite a bit. I had a hearing on Tuesday with a retired judge up in the St. Louis County Courthouse. I was sitting in Minneapolis. The defense attorney was in St. Paul. And if the defendant lived in Wright County, he would be the only one in Wright County. So we're in a different dynamic here. And I think this technology, I think for people who want to make a comment, I think it's making it more efficient for them to do that during the day.
All right, very well, gentlemen. Just thought I'd bring it up. Thank you.
Unless you're this 70-year-old farmer out in western Wright County.
Ken, I know you and I had discussed it a little bit, and I was just listening to the responses from Greg and Sean, and I'm on board going back to evenings, but on the same token, I do hear what they're saying, to being able to get in and make the comments, and we are still under the state order. So hopefully in the future we can maybe get back to evenings, because I know for people being on the board with full-time jobs, we've got to take work off to come to these meetings, and people that have businesses or hire people, or sometimes evenings are for us board members, or speaking for myself, it's evenings do work better. So, but I hear what Greg and Sean are both saying, and until we get to that point where things get a little more normal, we'll cross that bridge then, I guess, for me.
And then with that, we might have to keep an eye on the length of the agenda, because if you start running...
Oh, we've tried this so many times.
But in fairness, I mean, you folks, you got to get up for work early next morning. Do you want to get out here at 11 or 12 at night with some of these? But that can
Sure.
That can
Mike, Mike, you have to understand, generally the concern from the commissioner from District 5 is when Perkins is gonna close and when he can last get his.
Yeah, that's what the last one was. We're getting out of here, Perkins.
Oh, wow.
9:30 is half price pie.
Yep. So if we're going early, he drug it out.
All I can say is there's a change in the chair.
Yes.
You're over to French silk now, huh?
Double chocolate, Greg.
From where you're roosting, Greg, I don't know how you'd know where Perkins even was around here.
There's one there. Fine dining.
You heard about it.
Probably. So, is there anything else to come before the board? Otherwise, we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Terry, I don't know.
Still friends, Dan?
Got ran into me.